This week's best MMA bets, we're talking UFC Nashville. I'm going to give you guys my lock of the week, my most confident picks on the card. We'll talk my favorite underdogs, Degen Props of the night, and then finish the show out with the parlays. So make sure you guys smash the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, turn the post notifications on, and make sure you share the video too. Last card, UFC 317, Lock City Parlay came through again, making me undefeated over the 4 cards in June, and I'm feeling fantastic heading into this week as well. Let's start July off right. We had Joshua Van parlayed up with Ilya Taporia, and it was perfection. The plus money tags, because you guys know the locks, I'm always shooting for that plus money. Unbeaten over the past 5 cards, but 4-0 in the month of June. So I feel excited for this week. My anticipation is building. And I think I have concocted another 2-leg Lock City parlay for the plus money that's going to hit for us too. So without further ado, the lock of the week. Chris Curtis and the Kattar versus Garcia over 1.5 rounds. Chris Curtis, to me, stood out as an obvious pick when I broke this fight down for the first time because I see it as a pretty fair stylistic matchup. His boxing skills should be a difference maker. He's more powerful than Max Griffin. I think he's technically more sound. He's more accurate as well. And him dropping back down to 170, I don't think it's going to be a detrimental weight cut. Now, Chris Curtis has done his thing for a long time at 185, but I've always felt he was a bit of an undersized 85er and still was able to give, Brendan Allen a very difficult 5-round war in their rematch. And Roman Kopylov was able to put him away, but Kopylov is a slick tactical kickboxer who's in the top 15. Now, Chris Curtis fights someone who's about 2 years older than him, down in weight, a Max Griffin, coming off of some uninspiring performances. Not to say that Max Griffin is completely washed or anything like that, but most recently he got absolutely dog-walked by Michael Chiesa. Did have a competitive split decision win over Jeremiah Wells, where he won as a slight underdog, so got to respect that. Fight before that, lost to Michael Morales by decision, beat Tim Means by a split decision. A lot of close decision wins as of late. And I'll be real with you, I think Chris Curtis stylistically is a difficult matchup. I still think Curtis has more steam. I don't feel like it's career over for Chris Curtis. Max Griffin moves relatively well, and I would consider him a decent kickboxer. But I really do favor the hands of Chris Curtis, and I see him landing cleaner and bigger shots. I have a hard time envisioning a Max Griffin knocking a Chris Curtis out or picking him apart for 3 rounds. I think Curtis probably lands the harder shots. And if there is somebody to be knocked down in this fight, I would assume that it's Max Griffin being dropped by Chris Curtis as opposed to the contrary. I expect Chris Curtis to close that gap, to be able to box up Max Griffin. I think he'll make him uncomfortable and force him backwards a bit. I think he'll win the key striking exchanges, and I'll expect a Chris Curtis probably decision. Could he go out and get a knockout? Maybe, right? He does have the power to do it. Knocked out Joaquin Buckley at 185, and he's got a handful of KOs for sure at 185. It'll be interesting to see how he looks on the scales with this cut to 170, and it's been a while since he's done it, but I feel good about it. I really think, Chris Curtis could have probably been 170 pounds for the majority of his UFC career, but ultimately, chose to negate the weight cutting to a substantial degree and focus on 185. And his power carried, and he's had a lot of decent fights. Like, aside from his most recent fight, the Brendan Allen fight, he put on an excellent performance and nearly won the fight, ripping up his hamstring at the end. And he was this close. And I've been a believer in Curtis a lot, especially in that matchup. And you look, fight before that, he was in a back and forth one with Marc-Andre Barriault. That was probably one of his worst performances in victory, but did go out and win in a banger. And then he has like the Amavov no contest, even the Kelvin Gastelum. There should be a red flag around that one because he got headbutted in that fight, which I think really skewed the result. Ultimately, Gastelum beat him with, a bit of a, dirty moment. Not intentionally dirty, but ultimately it was a dirty moment because he got hurt by a head clash. And then we got Max Griffin. Like I talked about some of his recent matchups. At 39, does Max Griffin solve the Chris Curtis puzzle? I don't see it. I feel like Chris Curtis is a lot better than Max Griffin. I feel like he'll land bigger shots. I think Max is going to look to use similar to what Jack Hermanson did, which is like distance striking, like keeping Curtis off of him. But I don't think he's able to do it. Yeah, I think that Curtis is going to find his way on the inside and land some big shots. I would be damn surprised if Chris Curtis takes a loss to Max Griffin in 2025. I don't see it happening. I think Chris Curtis gets a win in his return to 170 pounds, and I'm excited as hell for it. Now, the over 1.5 in the Kattar Garcia fight, I think this is an evidence-based prediction, right? Yes, Steve Garcia is on a roll of violence and he is putting people away and delivering scary knockouts consistently. He has a lot of power in his hands, but he has not fought a Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar's durability is essentially unmatched. He was knocked out on paper with the injury TKO loss to Arnold Allen. But when you look at his career, Calvin Kattar has one of the best chins in UFC featherweight history, absorbed, record amounts of damage against Max Holloway and never went down. And even though he is at an advanced point of age, I still believe Calvin Kattar is going to be able to absorb shots from Garcia. And I also do not think that Calvin Kattar is all that easy to hit. Looking at his most recent fight against Yusuf Zalal, he fought someone who is a tactical kickboxer who relies a lot on movement. And Kattar was forced to chase for a lot of the fight and was picked apart for the first 2 rounds, albeit came on incredibly strong in round number 3 and really put out a good third round, which I think he can build off of. I know a lot of people feel like this is the end of Calvin Kattar, it's career over and whatnot. But I definitely think he makes this a fight with Steve Garcia. Even if the Kattar fight pick for you is Garcia and you have Kattar to lose, ultimately I did pick Kattar to win a close one. But regardless of outcome in the fight, I don't think Steve Garcia is putting Calvin Kattar away in a round and a half or less. I think that Calvin Kattar is going to be able to defend Steve Garcia's power shots. I think he will also be able to counter and land some significant shots of his own. Steve Garcia, he has an explosive power style, but there is upright moments and options for, shots to land for Kattar. I think there is a hitability to the side of Steve Garcia, and I think Kattar could work some solid straight punches, potentially even surprise Steve Garcia with some takedowns in the arsenal. I just have a hard time envisioning this fight ending quickly and Garcia being the first guy to just starch Calvin Kattar. I get it. Garcia's on a knockout roll right now, but you have to be realistic and compare opposition. Yes, he knocked out Kyle Nelson, which I thought was very impressive, but ultimately it's Kyle Nelson. Yes, he went out there and knocked out Sung Woo Choi, but Sung Woo Choi is a bit of a journeyman at best. Malquizio Costa's on a roll right now, and he was able to finish Melky, but Melky's still not top 15 level. Norden Beke, similar thing, right? Decent enough journeyman. Chase Hooper knockout was impressive at the time. Hooper moved up in weight and has got a lot better. But ultimately, Hooper at 145, especially not known for his stand-up, and he showed improvements in his 20s. I think Steve Garcia can make this a difficult fight for Kattar, and I wouldn't say that Kattar to win is a lock or anything like that, even though it is a pick. I do believe over 1.5 makes a ton of sense. I think this will be a fight where Steve Garcia is forced to go a bit longer, and we see how his game looks as time goes on. I do think Kattar is live for big counter shots and potentially could hurt Steve Garcia in this fight. Steve Garcia did lose to Mahashate by knockout earlier in his UFC career. I'm thinking that over 1.5 speaks volumes. I saw it and I said, over 1.5? With Chris Curtis, why does this seem like perfection? And I really believe that it is a perfect call. Now, you're going to get some plus money on it. It's plus 116. With the lock section, with the Savage Underdog section, I look for one of two things: an underdog money line that really speaks to me, or a 2-leg parlay that is going to be plus money. And this right here at plus 116 jumped out and said, yes, this is the fight pick to call. These two right here. An over in a fight between, honestly, a grizzled veteran who's known for incredible durability and a power puncher that isn't incredibly precise against someone in Kattar who boxes really well. And then on the other side, I really think Chris Curtis outworks and outstrikes Max Griffin. So I think we got 2 money picks parlayed up in the slight plus money zone to hit us another successful W and start July off right. I'm feeling good about it. We're back. We had an off week, and I'm feeling good. So the Lock City Savage Dog Lock for UFC Nashville. We got the over in Kattar Garcia. and we got Chris Curtis. The big two, put them together, and let's get some plus money. I do want to jump to the next section. I want to run through some of my most confident picks on the card, and I will bring them up on screen now. And I'll also be unloading two extras. And you might be looking, oh, Chris Curtis isn't there. Chris Curtis is a confident pick, but I didn't want to have 7 in the most confident pick section. I feel like I'd just be overloading the screen. But yes, Curtis is a confident call. That's why he was a part of the last section. But I got some more with most confident picks that I'm feeling good about that I think are worth talking about. So first things first, Beast Boy Davis, Mike Davis. I really think he should run through Ramirez. I think that this is a pretty large mismatch. And obviously, looking at the betting lines, so do the books, because currently Mike Davis is a minus 900 favorite in this fight against Mitch Ramirez. I wish it was 4. I wish it was 4-1. I think that Mike Davis is a lock. I'm very confident in him winning. I think there's a real possibility that he does go out there and get a finish, especially if he's looking to prove a point. Ramirez, both of his recent losses, he has been finished. Thiago Moises chopped him apart with kicks. He lost to Prates on Contender Series. And now he takes on Mike Davis, who is very well-rounded. I think could potentially win this fight anywhere that it goes. Now, Davis is normally knocking people out. It's plus 150 for the KO, but does have submission threats, even though not as common of an outcome for him. Does have that Natan Levy sub. Plus 300 for Davis by sub. The money line sucks, right? Inside distance is not great at minus 155. Ultimately, Mike Davis becomes more of a 3-4 leg parlay piece. I do think it hits. I'm confident that it does hit. I'd be relatively shocked if it doesn't come through, to be real with you guys. I think that Mitch Ramirez is just outmatched in all areas. He can brawl a bit. He's got a bit of takedowns, but it's not going to be enough for Mike Davis. I think Davis does everything a fair amount better than Mitch Ramirez. And I think that we could see Davis deliver some big shots on the feet, potentially get control time from top position, work a bit of ground and pound, maybe even work towards a sub. I'm leaning towards Davis looking to prove a point and get a finish. It wouldn't be a complete shock, though, if Davis, coming off that Fares-Ziam loss, plays it a little bit on the safer side and then goes out there and wins a decision. But I definitely think if he's looking to make a statement and, get back on the good side of maybe the UFC and fans and whatnot that are kind of thinking, he became a bust. I don't think he is. Then I believe a finish of Mitch Ramirez is definitely possible. I think that he has the tool set and the ability to finish Ramirez. It's just, does he put the pedal to the metal and search for the finish if he has Ramirez in a very vulnerable spot, or does he base it on control? A lot of Mike Davis's career, he's finishing people. Obviously, he's won decisions as well, but finishing ability is high, knockout threat is high, and I think he could hurt Mitch Ramirez in this fight and potentially stop him in the later stages. So I'm going to say Mike Davis finish. Ultimately, 9-1 is the confident call, the money line, which most people are going to be confident in that. And I do think it's something that you put in a longer shot parlay to add a little bit of steam. Obviously, a 2-legger with it, not great. We'll talk parlays at the end. Mike Davis should be a winner. Next up, Gabriel Bonfim. I think that stylistically, it's Bonfim all day to take out a 42-year-old Wonder Boy. I will be really impressed if Wonder Boy at 42 years of age can keep off this Brazilian berserker who just absolutely finishes majority of the people he fights. I mean, you look at his wins. Dude has 16 finishes, okay? He's got 16 finishes, and he has 9 of them in the first round. Tends to start very fast. That one decision was against Angelosa, where I think in some senses he played it a tad bit safe because he was coming off of the upset loss to Nicholas Dalby, where he kind of gassed out in that fight. And I took positives away from the Angelosa decision because, okay, he showed being calculated is something he can do. He showed a gas tank that was better than before. He doesn't just need to take people out in round number 1. Now, his most recent fight, submission over Chaos Williams, I guess that hasn't aged necessarily like a fine wine because Chaos Williams just got destroyed by Andreas Gustafsson, who I picked as an underdog against Chaos as well. But ultimately, he finished him. He locked him in a Darce choke, and I feel like the 42-year-old Wonder Boy is going to be very vulnerable to some type of counter submission from Bonfim. I think that we could see early pressure from Bonfim and then landing a takedown, putting Wonderboy on the ground, threatening with a submission, beating him up a bit with ground and pound. I also think that in the close range striking, Bonfim could be dangerous for Wonderboy with his hands. Obviously, long range kickboxing is the bread and butter of what Wonderboy does. And from distance, he can technically pick apart most strikers in the UFC. Bonfim is a dangerous striker, and he has knockout ability, but definitely the grappling skills are what shine the most for me. And I think a submission for the 27-year-old seems really likely against the 42-year-old Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I think he can kind of play it like Pantoja did with early pressure, making Wonderboy go backwards, making him uncomfortable, and then timing takedowns from there and using his superior ground skills. Obviously, the odds for the fight are pretty wide here. We're looking at Bonfim sitting around minus 425. Not great odds, but high likelihood of success. I anticipate a finish as well. Bonfim by submission is very live at plus 130-ish range. And then the under 2.5 is around minus 130 as well. I just think with Wonderboy losing 2 fights in a row by finish, Shavkat subbed him a year and a half ago. Buckley chinned him 9 months ago. I feel like when you got a guy in his 40s who starts getting finished, it's more likely the next time is also a finish. And I think this time it would be 3 in a row by finish loss for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. It's unfortunate because we all love Wonderboy. And I think he's amazing on the desk. He's very intellectual. And I would love to see more of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson on that desk. I hope that we see him as an analyst, more often, especially towards the twilight of his career. And I'm assuming retirement in the next fight or two. Maybe here, this is the last one. Maybe he does one more. It remains to be seen. Maybe they give him a fight against another OG to finish it out next time. But I do think a 27-year-old, 17-1 Brazilian is just a nightmare matchup for the 42-year-old Wonderboy. And the pick is going to be Bonfim, and I am going to say he does get it via submission as well. Next up, the odds aren't fun here. It's Fatima Kline at minus 1,300. I am going to anticipate her to get an inside distance win. The inside distance line for Kline is actually pretty playable at minus 120, so something to mention. Could she dominate the fight and win a decision? Absolutely, but I could see her absolutely mauling Melissa Martinez when they hit the ground. I think she can beat her up with ground and pound. I think she could even threaten with submissions. Fatima Kline is very good top control, very good takedowns. Melissa Martinez is a nice striker. Her kickboxing game is smooth, but I don't think she's going to have the power to keep Kline off of her. And I expect Kline to bully Melissa Martinez. And I'm anticipating a lopsided fight. You do get plus money if you play the under 2.5. I feel like Fatima Kline to finish makes sense. She's coming off the finish of Victoria Dudakova. And I think that even in her loss of her UFC debut, it was a compelling performance against Jasmine Jasudavicius where she went 3 hard, did well early in the fight. You have to favor her to win. Now, she does have a lot of decision wins on the resume. 3 decisions opposite 4 finishes, 3 knockouts with 1 submission. Martinez, not necessarily an easy girl to put away, but in, a close fight against Elise Ardoyan last time, lost to Elise Reed back in 2022. I just think this is a bit of a mismatch as far as prospect battles. 8-1 versus 7-1 with odds like this is because the disparity in grappling is vast. And I think Fatima Kline shows that here. Officially, I'll pick Fatima Kline to win inside of the distance. I do think she's live to stop her on the ground. Should be a lopsided fight. Obviously, the books agree. There's nothing too fun about a minus 1,300. I don't have any crazy hot take for this one besides Fatima Kline should run over Melissa Martinez. I want to keep running. So the next one, I am picking Teixeira, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Derek Lewis, we got to see him on the scales, but if we get fat boy Derek Lewis, I don't know where his head is at 40 years of age. Hasn't fought in a little bit over a year. It was a 3rd-round knockout of Rodrigo Nascimento, and that hasn't aged that well because Nascimento's losing fights in the PFL. Teixeira, obviously a completely unproven prospect at a high level, beat Justin Tafa last time. There was like a shot to the belt line and then the elbow that dropped Tafa. Obviously, some folks were, feeling it was a little low, which I get it, right? The shot was right on the line, and I could understand, potentially the cup was raised, but that elbow that was landed on the inside was gnarly. Teixeira has nasty Muay Thai skills in close range with his elbows and knees, obviously, and he does have pretty fast twitch punching ability and does seem to be pretty sharp with his hands. A 40-year-old Derek Lewis, who we don't know where the motivations lie, versus an 8-0 Brazilian prospect who's getting put in this main event for a reason. Don't get it twisted. The UFC is looking at this and saying, okay, We need Brazilian talent. The Brazilians are like 1-9 in UFC main events right now. And, I'm hoping they do a card in Brazil later this year. And I think Thaleson Teixeira getting a violent win here, taking out a longtime staple of the top 15 of the UFC heavyweight division, now burst onto the scene and, is a legit contender. I mean, he's got a frame that poses a lot of threat to a vast majority of guys in the heavyweight division. Seemingly good takedown defense, very powerful evidence of that. Dangerous in all ranges with the striking, with the 83-inch reach, but also the Muay Thai ability gives him a threat in close range to work in the clinch. Derek Lewis, of course, is the knockout king, obviously chinning, majority of his opponents throughout his UFC career. He's got the touch of death. And I have picked Derek Lewis against guys like the likes of, Marcos Ojiro de Lima when everybody kind of wrote him off and I still had faith. And Derek Lewis still seems to have the fight him. I picked him against Nascimento, right? Derek Lewis still can bang. But every time I watch him, especially that Nascimento fight, it's like I see this evidence of a slight slowdown effect, just slightly, every single time. And now he's been off for a year. He's taken on a 25-year-old who's 6'7", who also has a 4-inch reach advantage with that 4-inch height advantage, who seems to have knockout power, who I'm assuming is getting better and better each and every time he steps in the damn octagon. You got to favor Thaleson Teixeira to get a knockout. He's getting put in this spot for a reason, and I think there's faith on Teixeira. And the UFC, the marketing machine, they know what they're doing. They know how to promote somebody, and I think they're like, okay, Thaleson Teixeira, this is a prospect to keep an eye on. Let's burst him on the scene against a fan favorite. And if he goes out there and chins Derek Lewis in the first round, which I'm anticipating a knockout, it's around -175 for the KO. That's the confident pick. Obviously, Teixeira, confident pick straight. Could he somehow get a submission? I doubt it, but maybe, right? More likely it's knockout, and that's why the confidence lies there. I doubt these two are going 5 rounds. I think Teixeira is just too sound with technical kickboxing with power too, right? It's not like he's just a technician that outpoints you. He also carries a lot of knockout ability, and I don't know where Derek Lewis's head is at. I look forward to seeing him on the scales. I mean, if we got 4-pack Derek Lewis, maybe things are changing. I did see the official card picture, and Derek Lewis looked pretty chubby, but potentially could be an older picture, but seemed to be more recent. I don't think I've seen that picture of him recently, which, could be wrong, but ultimately I'm not anticipating the best Derek Lewis ever. I am anticipating the best Thaleson Teixeira ever. And I'm going to predict Thaleson Teixeira knocks Derek Lewis out. And I feel pretty confident that he does that. Obviously, you're not getting plus money, but there is something to be said about a Thaleson Teixeira knockout prop in a parlay. And also, as we get in the prop section, I'll go a little bit deeper with this fight because I got another one. But stay tuned for the Degen Props because I got something sneaky. I think that Teixeira is running over Derek Lewis. And I think he is going to knock him out in the first round. And I think it's going to be a breakout performance for him. And he's definitely one to watch in this heavyweight division, which is seemingly wide open with Aspinall now promoted to champion, John Jones vacating but re-entering the testing pool. Who knows when John Jones comes back? But if Thaleson Teixeira gets a knockout here, could be a top 5 fight next. If he knocks out somebody else, the kid could be fighting for the belt in 2026. That's really what I'm getting at. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does against a grizzled vet, a longtime staple of the heavyweight division, and a knockout king himself. Battle a knockout artist. I'm going to favor the young prospect. I'm going Thaleson Teixeira to raise that Brazilian flag up, and we need it. We need some Brazilian savages in the heavyweight division. Obviously, we got Jailton Almeida. It's not like we don't have Brazilian savages, but Thaleson Teixeira is a knockout specialist, and I'm looking forward to seeing him fight Derek Lewis, and I think a knockout is more than live in this one. So Thaleson Teixeira, knockout, the confident pick. Now, I do have 2 extras that I'll bring up right now. We got Vitor Petrino. The odds for this fight are ugly. He's a -700 favorite. I do anticipate that he goes out and chins Austin Lane. I know some folks are like, oh, Lane's got the shot, but there's no fun in the odds at -240 by knockout. This is more of just like I have to mention it type of fights. I don't think that Austin Lane is really UFC level. He's bottom end heavyweight. And I ask myself, does Petrino at least have the skills to chin a bottom end heavyweight? I say absolutely. Austin Lane's got the height and reach advantage, which is a factor, but I think he's getting caught over the top, man. Austin Lane is going to be taller by 4 inches. So he is going to be like slightly punching downward. I think this is going to give an opportunity for Petrino to throw those big looping shots. And we've seen Austin Lane chinned all 6 of his knockout losses, or all 6 of his losses, spoil it, knockout losses. And I think Vitor Petrino's got the power to put him away. I am excited to see him on the scales. I want to see what a heavyweight Petrino looks like. He definitely is a physical specimen. Maybe he's better at heavyweight. Another aspect of this fight is I don't think Austin Lane is going to be able to out-grapple Petrino. I know Petrino was subbed up by Anthony Smith. He picked him up, and then he got locked in a gilly. And I know Dustin Jacoby chinned him. So 2 losses in a row for a prospect that was red hot prior to it. But ultimately, I look at the Jacoby fight and I say, okay, he lost to a former Glory kickboxer and a Dustin Jacoby who looked amazing last fight against Bruno Lopez, knocking him out early in round 1. And Petrino still had good moments in the fight. Yes, he got caught and violently finished, but there were still positives to take away in some aspects. And now moving up to heavyweight, and he's had some time off. He's had 6 months to think about it and improve. He's only 27, nearly 28, but still 20s, heavyweight, former light heavyweight. I don't know if Petrino stays at heavyweight or not. I'm curious what he weighs in at. Definitely very muscle bound. I don't think Austin Lane is beating him. I'm picking Vitor Petrino. I think he's very live to get the knockout, but don't underrate his ability to out-grapple Austin Lane, because that could be a possibility as well. And I favor Petrino, though, to follow suit where we've seen Lane lose before. I think Petrino gets a knockout in this one here. And then the next one, I am picking the side of Morgan Charrière because I really believe he's the sharper blade between the two, him and Nate Landwehr. The odds have him around that minus 270 range, so a bit wide for Morgan Charrière, especially in a matchup with like a tough brawler in Nate Landwehr, who's been in entertaining fights for his entire UFC career. But he simply put absorbs way too much damage for my liking. And though Morgan Charrière 3.5 months ago was essentially destroyed by Nathaniel Wood is like the antithesis to Nate Landwehr. Nathaniel Wood is a technical maestro, whereas Nate the Train is a hittable brawler who outdogs people. Morgan Charrière was in a back and forth war with Chepe Mariscal, where he was able to go hard for all 3 rounds. I feel like he's going to have the gas tank here for this one. It's crazy, right? He's only 29 with over 30 pro fights. He's got more fights than Nate the Train. I think Charrière is going to be technically sound and sharp. Of course, worrisome sometimes picking the French kickboxers, but Charrière is well-rounded. Also has a good ground game. It's not like he's just a striker. I think that Landwehr is too hittable. Even in the win against Jamal Emmers, he was getting stung up a bit before the comeback KO. Coming off the loss last time for Nate Landwehr, he got beat up pretty bad by Doo-Ho Choi. I think Morgan Charrière can beat him as well. Maybe a late finish, maybe a decision. With Nate Landwehr, it's in Tennessee, so I expect him to bring the thunder, and I'm expecting a badass fight between the two. But I think Charrière has the gas tank, the experience, and the technical precision to fare pretty well against Nate the Train. I'm anticipating either a later stage knockout or a decision for Morgan Charrière. I think both of those are pretty viable outcomes for the fight. Normally, Charrière is knocking people out, though, if he's winning, so Nate the Train, as much of a brawler as he is in the hitability and maybe even the hometown crowd behind him of Tennessee, might put him in a worse spot because he's looking to bang and throw heat and then ends up getting put him down himself. So I'm going Morgan Charrière. I'm favoring the knockout. He's a big favorite, and he should win. Honorable mention for the section, Eduarda Moura. I'm not putting fucking 8 confident picks out, but I do think Eduarda Moura is live to beat Lauren Murphy for sure. Like, she's a confident pick without being in the section. She's a huge favorite, minus 600. She's probably live to win a dominant and lopsided grappling-based decision against a 42-year-old. So add her in as the honorable mention, but I won't bring her up officially because I'm not trying to spam the damn section with the whole card's picks are all confident. You see what I'm saying? But those are my most confident picks for UFC Nashville. I do want to talk about some underdogs, all right? If you guys are looking for plus money lines, I got 2 of them. I'll bring them up. One looks familiar, and then the other one's a new face. Let's first talk about the new face. We got Valter Walker. How does he win? Grappling. Valter Walker seems to be taking his career damn serious. Looks ripped. 245 pounds, most recent weigh-in. His UFC debut, he was like a chubby 265. Seems to have lost at least 20 pounds of body fat, maybe even put on some muscle tissue, so lost more body fat. As much as Kline Nzechukwu is a tricky striker and very awkward, I don't know how he fares with a huge heavyweight like this who has a very strong ground game and nasty submission skills. I think Nzechukwu's in trouble as they hit the mat. Yes, if he's striking from range, Nzechukwu could land some thunderous shots on Valter Walker. I could see his straight shots being a big factor, teeps to the body, and just picking Walker apart from the outside because Walker's striking's a bit sloppy, to be fair. But as they tie up, I expect Walker to be physically stronger. Being an inch taller, it's going to be interesting to see how, Nzechukwu fares with just a full-size heavyweight. He beat Lukas Drezhki, who has the controversial win against Valter Walker. And a terrible listen, Walker's debut versus the most recent Walker is a different animal. You can see it physically and you can see it in the performances. He did run over Drezhki, though, which was impressive. And he beat Chris Barnett, one of the shortest heavyweights of all time. Now he takes on Valter Walker, who's on a 2-fight win streak, taking his career more serious, 27 years of age, has some UFC experience now. I think Valter Walker can get this fight to the ground. I think he can out-wrestle and out-muscle Kline Nzechukwu, and then I think he'd be live for a submission. Obviously, Valter Walker has been locking up the damn heel hooks left and right. Back-to-back heel hook submission wins. Beat Don'Tale Mayes and Junior Tafa, two of the worst heavyweights, right? Not as good as Nzechukwu, to be fair. But he did deal with a big body in Don'Tale Mayes and submitted him early. Don'Tale Mayes, 6'6", 6'7". And then he obviously beat Junior Tafa, who's a little bit on the smaller side, but dangerous striker. And also on this card and a knockout threat against anybody on the feet. Did well against Mo Usman striking. I think Walker's getting it to the ground. I think Walker's going to be in real good condition, could potentially wrestle hard for 3 rounds and just blanket Kline Nzechukwu, but also is live to work towards a submission finish against Kline Nzechukwu as well. So the pick is Valter Walker. I do anticipate Valter Walker going out there and locking up a submission win over Kline Nzechukwu. Ultimately, the worry is Valter Walker failing takedowns and getting caught on the feet with, his sloppy offense, which sometimes he throws a little wild. But if he's at the legs, if he's at the hips, if he's on the inside, I think he's getting Nzechukwu down, and I'll say he's live for a submission. I think he's a good underdog. He's sitting around the plus 180 range as an underdog here, and I'll favor the 27-year-old grappling ace to pull off the win over the former light heavyweight Nzechukwu. Odds for a finish by sub, 5-1, so plus 500 for Walker. I think he's live for that 5-1 sub, and I think he's beaten Kline Nzechukwu. Now, I want to talk Calvin Kattar. You can see him on the screen. I'm picking him to win a nail biter with Steve Garcia. This is a worrisome pick. I said it to the people on Sunday. I'm making this breakdown in New England. I'm not anymore. I'm back home, but I made it in New England. No way I could pick against Calvin Kattar. He's training at TriStar. He's in a matchup against somebody that's going to be more available to be hit than his most recent 2 opponents. Aljo, who wrestle fucked him, and then Yusuf Zalal, who, picked him apart from range and then just ran from him in round 3. And then Kattar won that 3rd round. I think Calvin Kattar can build off of that 3rd round with Yusuf Zalal, especially against someone more available to be hitting Steve Garcia. I think this could be a badass back and forth fight. I like the over 1.5 here. That's why it's a Lock City parlay piece. But as an underdog in that plus 110, plus 105, plus 103 range, Kattar is live to pull through in a back and forth fight. I don't think this is like crazy mismatch. Kattar's never been chinned with, shots. He only, tore up his leg and went down against Allen. Normally, Kattar's about as durable as they come. And I don't think Steve Garcia is putting him away. I believe in Calvin Kattar, and I think Calvin Kattar can absorb big shots from Steve. I think he can defend big shots from Steve, and I think he could outbox him in a very competitive 3-round fight. I'm picking Calvin Kattar to win. I think he could hurt Steve Garcia at some point. Obviously, 37. Obviously, a 4-fight losing streak, but he is over at TriStar, and they got good game plans. Don't be shocked if Calvin Kattar times a couple takedowns here either. I'm going to say a technical Calvin Kattar still's got a couple left in him, and I think he beats Steve Garcia. I don't see Kattar going out on a 5-fight losing streak, retiring from MMA, or getting cut from the UFC here. I think he pulls off the upset win against a surging knockout puncher, but someone that has beaten more mid-level opposition where Kattar's just been fighting high-level comp in and out. Like Yusuf Zalal, you can say, is the worst of the bunch, but he's a surging prospect right now, and he's extremely technical. And if that's a 5-round fight, that fight could go completely differently. So I'm going to say Calvin Kattar can beat Steve Garcia. I definitely think he makes it a dog fight, and I definitely think we're going over 1.5. Give me Kattar to pull through in a very competitive matchup. Watch for his straight punches, watch for the takedown threat, and expect some defensive soundness, because it's not like Steve Garcia is a precise puncher like Max Holloway. He's more of a clubbing power hitter, and I just don't think Kattar walks into stupid shit like that, and I think Kattar finds some good counters. I'm saying Kattar finds a way. As a slight underdog, I'm picking him. So those are my 2 favorite dogs on the card. I do want to talk a little bit about the Degen props, all right? So we got a few of them. First things first, we'll mention, I do think Bonfim by submission over the great and powerful Wonder Boy is live. It's around plus 130 to plus 140. I'll anticipate Bonfim to pressure Wonder Boy, make him uncomfortable, and then eventually sub him up. The next one, Teixeira. I told you guys I'd bring it around again, and I needed plus money. Teixeira by first round KO. I think he's live for the first round KO at plus 175. Can you imagine Teixeira just puts him away? Sub 1 minute knockout. Fight ends in the first minute plus 450. Is there a Teixeira wins by KO in the first minute prop? That'd be crazy. I don't think it is. Under half a round plus 200. I think Teixeira's knocking Lewis out. I really anticipate Teixeira to get a violent win. I'm not convinced that Derek Lewis is in prime shape nor prime headspace. And I think that here, Teixeira has his way with him early. So I think the first round knockout prop in the plus money territory is actually more live than you'd anticipate. Yes, plus 175 is not super exciting. It's not like it's plus 400 or anything like that, but there is some plus money there. And I'll anticipate a first round finish for the striking Brazilian Savage at 6'7". Next one, Chris Curtis, Max Griffin to go over 2.5 at minus 245. I'm anticipating it to do such a thing. I think Curtis could hurt Griffin, but I don't know if he'll put him away. It's been a while since he's got a knockout. The Curtis KO is 3-1. The Curtis decision minus 140. I will favor that decision side. I do think he's live to get it on the cards. And then Kattar Garcia over 1.5. We've already spoke about this one. It's part of the Lock City parlay. It's minus 160, and it spoke to me off rip. I think that Calvin Kattar and Steve Garcia are going to go to the later stages, especially into the later stages of the second round. But I think it's even live to go distance here. And I'm going to say that over 1.5 is a pretty damn good play. It spoke to me. I saw it. I said, over 1.5 between these two? It's kind of like one of those, it makes too much sense. But like not too much sense where it's a trap because it's not plus money. It's minus 160. And that's just a line that said, that's the one to touch. So that's why I like the Lock City parlay. I'm liking what I'm looking at. One little last mention. I do think Tafa's live for a KO, but there's no fun in the odds. It's minus 120. He's a minus 175 favorite altogether. But I do think Tafa's live for a knockout over Tokos. And I do think that fight probably goes under 2.5 rounds, which sits at minus 350. Then if you want like a chalky under 2.5 in the main event, also is minus 450. Just some props to mention for you guys, but that's the slew of what I like as far as, the straight fighter picks, money lines, a couple props in the mix, but I want to parlay things up. It's your favorite section. It's my favorite section. Let's jump to the parlays. Make sure you guys hit that like button too. W to the people. I love you guys, and subscribe if it's your first time here. We're closing in on 50,000. At the top, safe but boring, which is normally fire. Curtis and Davis at minus 210. It's not a great line, but safe but boring tends to hit, and yeah, it should. Now, confident AF, Curtis, Davis, and Bonfim. If it was plus money, it would have been more of a temptation for me to even consider a three-leg Lock City, but I anticipate these three to win. At minus 118, it is confident. It's one of those high-confidence three-leggers. Of course, two-leggers are better for high confidence, but for a three-leg, and I think all three got clear paths to victory. I see them winning. Curtis and Teixeira by KO at plus 109 is a very good play. I even had that as an honorable mention or a consideration. I'll consider it was a contender for the Lock City parlay this week. Then below, Kattar Garcia over 1.5 and Curtis at plus 116. Lock City parlay, badass two-leg. And then the good four down below, Davis, Bonfim, Petrino, and Charrière at plus 127. I think it's very live. Obviously, there's no fun in plus 127 as opposed to like a 4-1 line like you see a little bit down below. But it is what it is. It's still plus money. Now, a powerful four-play, Teixeira, Bonfim, Davis, and Curtis. I do think the big four hit. Curtis, Davis, Bonfim, and Teixeira by KO. If you want a little extra plus, is plus 190, nearly 2-1. I anticipate the sleek call to be pretty slick. Now, I like this next one. Teixeira by KO, Kattar and Garcia's over 1.5 and Curtis. So we're putting the Lock City parlay with, I think, a very high confidence and likely prop in Teixeira by KO at plus 239. It spoke to me. I'm very confident in Lock City, and I could have put Teixeira in the Lock City as a piece with either one of the two. It was a consideration. I consider going Teixeira KO and then Kattar Garcia over 1.5. But to put them all together, I think at plus 239, I like it. Now, I'll say this for those that don't just screenshot and bail. If you want something with a little less steam on it, but just a two-legger, Teixeira by knockout and Kattar Garcia over 1.5 is a W. So W in the comments to those that stuck around and read it. You could even write sneaky if you want. And then down below, sneaky 3-1, Bonfim at the bottom there with Curtis. And then the lock, obviously, pieces of Curtis and Kattar, Garcia over 1.5. And Teixeira by KO plus 324. It's a sneaky play. I think this four-legger is fantastic. And it's good plus money. And I think it comes through. Now, if you want doggy style, we got the underdog Valter Walker with, it's actually not a plus money prop, but it is plus 371. We're going doggy style to Charrière KO and Valter Walker. Now, if you want a good lineup with props, which, take some gusto, it's a three-legger at plus 487. Bonfim to win by sub with Teixeira KO with Kattar and Garcia's over 1.5 rounds plus 487. This seems like a damn good lineup. Now, down below, I think this is pretty good money. Curtis, Walker, Teixeira KO. Yes, you have to have faith in the underdog Walker, and you're matching it up with Teixeira by KO, which is likely, and Curtis to win, which is likely at plus 526. It's money for a reason. Down below, Savage play, Walker, Teixeira KO, Kattar Garcia over 1.5, Curtis and Bonfim. This seems like a fantastic 5-leg. Obviously, Walker needs to come through. That's the worrisome call of them all. But when you're looking for plus 1172, if you're looking for plus 1,000, you're looking for Savage plays. Yeah, for 10-1, you're going to need to throw in an underdog a lot of the time, or you're going to have fucking 8 legs to your slate. I do think this could hit. Obviously, Valter Walker needs to perform. We'll see what happens. Degen Savage down below. Walker to Charrière KO, Bonfim sub, and the Kattar Garcia over 1.5 at plus 1662. And then the Savage Lotto ticket, throw Chris Curtis on top of what you saw above it with the slate of, 5 Savage calls plus 2240. That's the Lotto ticket of the week. And I think it's a damn live one, man. I'm feeling good about these plays. I'm actually excited for weigh-ins to see how some of the fighters fighting at different weight classes look. And obviously, I want to see how D-Lou looks on the scales. Things are going to get interesting this Saturday. But I do think we got a pretty badass lineup of parlays. I'm feeling good about everything. These lines have spoke to me. And I think that we got a badass slate. Obviously, I recommend you do your own research and see where your research lines up with mine to give yourself the highest probability of success. But you guys know, I trust the tape. I trust the shit. I do this, man. I lock in. And through the month of June, the Lock City all plus money has been spectacular. Undefeated in the month. And still, 5 unbeaten streak if you count, the month before, we had like a no contest and it kind of slewed everything, but still, everything slid through. But as far as the plus money, 4 in a row, looking to make it 5, and I'm feeling damn good about it. I'm feeling like we're starting July off right, all right? I like what we're looking at here. I hope you guys like what we're looking at too. Obviously, the parlay section is the fan favorite, and it's my favorite, especially when you get up to the safer stuff, 2-3 leggers. Highest likelihood of success, but you can have some fun with some Savage Lotto tickets, and, they hit too. It's not like they don't. Those are the parlays. That was this week's Best MMA Bets. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the show. Make sure you guys all smash the like button. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button too. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. W to everybody. W to all you savages. I love you guys. W in the comments, you got nothing to say, but definitely let me know. Do you have a Lock City parlay, or do you have an underdog lock that you like, or do you just have a chalky favorite that you want to mention? Let me know some of your favorite bets in the comments down below. I want to hear from the people. I want to know what the savages are thinking. Hey, 50 KJ this Saturday. All right, we're on the way. So make sure you hit subscribe if it's your first time here. I'm very excited. And this felt like a real good episode of this week's Best MMA Bets. I love you guys. Turn the post notifications on. Live streams every day. Videos pretty much every day. The content flow is back. I'm back from vacation. I'm feeling good and I'm ready to work. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Much love. Peace out.